One of the nation's biggest literary competitions is back. Manchester's writing competition gives unpublished writers a chance to win £10,000 for their poetry and fiction. And tell us more, we're joined by Chair of the judging panel, reader of creative writing at MMU, and author Nicholas Royle. Hi Nick, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure, thank you.
So you've been in a part of the competition in 2008. How did the competition start, and tell us a bit more about it?
Okay, well in 2008 the poetry competition started, and in those, back at the beginning, we did the poetry competition one year and the fiction competition the next year. So in fact I started in 2009 when we did the first fiction prize, and I was head judge on that, and I've occupied that position ever since. And then we did move to doing it every year, doing both poetry and fiction every year.
Nice. So have there ever been a story throughout these many years that stayed with you?
There have been loads of stories that have stayed with me. I mean, in that very first year, 2009, I mean, all of the winning stories and many of the shortlisted stories have stayed with me. But that first year, there was a shortlisted story called Static by Alison Moore that has stayed with me because, well, I was knocked out by it. I thought it was an amazing story. And I got in touch. Of course, the competition is all anonymous. We don't know who has written the entries until we tell the organisers who our shortlisted authors and who our winners are, and at that point we find out who they are. And so at some point after the event, that first time in 2009, I got in touch with Alison Moore, and she became a writer of mine.
Yes.
Because I run a small press called Nightjar. She did a story for Nightjar, and then I started working for a publisher as an editor, and she wrote a novel called The Lighthouse, which ended up being shortlisted for the Booker Prize.
Oh wow.
So incredibly exciting things can happen as a result of even being shortlisted in this prize. And other stories have stuck in my mind over the years, like Sakina Hoffler's story only 2 or 3 years ago, and Adam Wilmington's story called It, that was in 2013, I think. And one of the remarkable things about Adam's story and about the event, the prize-giving event, was that it was the only time that I felt that when Adam gave his speech, all of the shortlisted writers, you felt, were completely united in the feeling that the right person had won.
Yeah.
And that was just, there was this feeling in the room that was incredibly moving. It was partly because of what Adam said in his speech and partly because of just how he spoke.
Yeah.
And it was just incredible. Because the one thing that worries me every year is how the shortlisted writers who don't win are going to feel. And on that occasion, as I say, they were united, and they thought there was this great sense in the room that, yes, the right person won.
No one was bitter, everyone just fully
exactly,
accepted
no one was
it.
bitter. And I mean, we never have anyone, I mean, once or twice there's been a shortlisted writer who you kind of sense, yeah, they were disappointed. And that's natural, but you don't want to be able to sense it.
Yeah.
And when Adam won, you know, there was no sense like that.
Yeah. To be fair, if I lost out on the chance of £10,000, that might be a slight bitter, but I would appreciate the art form.
Yeah, I mean, we always make the point that you've kind of already won if you get to that stage. You know, we have about 1,800 entries most years, so to reach the top 6 out of 1,800 is amazing.
Yeah. So out of all the 1,800 to now down to 6, what do you look for? Are there any techniques or just one thing you actually look for in a winning entry or a shortlisted entry?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I wish I had a good answer for it. I think in a way we kind of have to empty our minds and not be looking for something in particular. It's a bit like when you go shopping these days. I don't know if it's just these days, maybe it's always been like this. If you have a very clear idea of what you want when you go shopping, I find this anyway, invariably I'm not going to find it.
Yes.
Whereas if I go shopping with an open mind and I just have a sort of very, very vague idea of what I'm looking for, then it's easier to find something. Similarly with reading all of those stories, they're always divided between 3 or 4 if there are 4 judges. And so we each read about 500 or 600 stories each, and then we recommend a certain number to each other, and then we all read all of those stories. And I think I speak for my fellow judges when I say that we don't really know what we're looking for. We're just looking for something that's going to grab us, going to make us feel something. Something that I like is when I finish a story, I might still have some questions about it, and I like that. I'd rather be left with questions about it than have the feeling that the writer has given me all of the answers. I don't really want all the answers. I'd rather be left with questions and be thinking about what the answers might be.
Yeah. So there's not a cheat code. There's not a little system that you can bypass.
Absolutely not. No.
It just depends on the pieces.
Having said that, it is important to write the best story you can, to present it in the best possible way that you can. So, if you're thinking about entering, please do. There's still time, I think. And if you think you've got your story up to the point where it's ready to enter, and you haven't, for instance, read it out loud, you've got to do that. You've absolutely got to read your story out loud to yourself, because you will spot things otherwise that you wouldn't spot. You will spot mistakes, you will spot words that you've repeated that you didn't want to repeat, little things like that. So read it out loud. To, just to make sure, to give yourself the best possible chance. And if you spot a mistake in it and you've got half an hour to go before the deadline, fix the mistake. Because we're always kind of we're not looking for reasons to stop reading, but if you start seeing more and more mistakes in something and it's a choice between that and something else, we might go with the story that has fewer mistakes in it.
Yeah, I always find reading out loud is the best advice for any writer, any poet, because you hear it how it's actually, not how you see it in your mind. Yeah,
it's one of the golden rules, I think.
And sometimes in your mind it's so much better than actually on the paper. And
that's
you're
the danger.
Oh, let's change, let's do a redraft.
Yeah.
So it's been a difficult year, obviously, for the pandemic, for creatives. How have the world of writing adapted?
Well, I think some people might have flourished. Some people might, because obviously writing is it's generally regarded as a very solitary occupation. It's generally, you're sitting in a room with a screen or a pen and paper or whatever, often on your own. So not that difficult, not that different from lockdown conditions. So some writers have thrived, flourished. They've not seen any great difference in the way that they operate. Whereas other people have really missed human contact. And for instance, I do a lot of my writing on trains or in cafes and bars. So there were periods when I couldn't do that, and I really missed that. And so I, for one, I really don't want to jinx things by saying we're nearly through this pandemic, because I don't know if we are or not, but I'm very glad that we are at least apparently through all of the lockdown.
Yes, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and the Manchester writing competition is just a guiding light for any writer who wants to get back on it.
Yes.
Well, thank you again for joining us, Nick.
My pleasure.
The deadline for the Poetry Prize and the Fiction Prize is the 28th of January. So if you think you can win, there's still time to enter. You can find details on the MMU website at mmu.ac.uk/writing competition.